Three words. 8 is great. 8 products per customer, 8 ways to extract money from people who trusted their own bank. And when employees couldn't sell 8, they started making them up. 3.5 million fake accounts, created without consent, for 14 years. Leadership knew and let it continue. This is the story of how a corporate slogan destroyed millions of lives, and how those responsible walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars, without anyone going to prison. To understand how this was possible, we need to go back. Not to the moment the scandal broke, but to the moment Wells Fargo became the most admired bank in America. It's 2015. Wells Fargo has just surpassed the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China as the largest bank in the world by market capitalization. Bigger than J.P. Morgan, bigger than Bank of America, bigger than any financial institution on the planet. Fortune magazine puts it on its most admired companies list. American Banker names its head of retail banking the most powerful woman in banking. CEO John Stumpf is named Banker of the Year. Wall Street loves Wells Fargo. And you know why? Because while other banks were betting on risky derivatives and speculative trading, Wells Fargo was doing something seemingly simple, selling products to its own customers. Lots of products, more products than any other bank. They called it cross-selling. The idea was elegant. If a customer has a checking account, why not offer them a savings account too, and a credit card, and insurance, and a line of credit? The more products per customer, the more revenue. The more revenue, the higher the stock price. The higher the stock price, the more executives earned. It was a perfect cycle, at least on paper. But there was a problem that no one on Wall Street wanted to see. The numbers were too good, too consistent, too perfect. And behind those numbers, inside branches spread across America, something was happening that no one could have imagined. A pressure, a culture, a system that turned ordinary employees into unwitting participants in the largest banking fraud in history. And it all started with a man who believed that selling banking products was the same as selling hamburgers. The story begins in 1998. That year, Wells Fargo merged with Norwest Corporation, a bank based in Minneapolis. Technically, Norwest bought Wells Fargo, but they kept the California name. It had more prestige. What they didn't keep was the culture, because Norwest brought with it a man with a radically different philosophy, Richard Kovacevic. Kovacevic didn't think like a banker. He thought like a retailer. In a 1998 interview, he said something disturbing. "I don't see any difference between selling a mortgage and selling a hamburger. They're both products." This was the essence of cross-selling. The more products per customer, the more profit. And Kovacevic had a number in mind. 8. 8 products per customer. Why? Because it rhymed. 8 rhymes with great. Going for great. The slogan spread to every branch, every meeting, every performance board. But there was a problem. The math didn't work. How many banking products does the average person need? 3, 4, maybe 5? 8 was impossible to achieve legitimately. And when you set an impossible target, you create only 2 options: fail or cheat. In Kovacevic's system, failure wasn't an option. Every branch had daily targets. Employees were monitored hour by hour. Public rankings, humiliation for those who fell behind, and termination for those who didn't meet quotas. So employees started making things up. They called it gaming, manipulation. They opened accounts without customers' knowledge, transferred $1 to activate the account, created fake email addresses, forged signatures, activated cards no one had requested. And they weren't criminals. They were ordinary workers, many earning $12 an hour, trapped between ethics and survival. One former employee described it, "I cried every day before going to work. I knew it was wrong, but if I didn't meet my targets, I'd lose my job." Others vomited from stress. Panic attacks were common. One employee drank hand sanitizer to cope. And when someone tried to report it, Wells Fargo had an ethics hotline. It was supposed to protect whistleblowers. In practice, it worked as a trap. Bill Bedeau sent an email to the CEO warning about widespread illegal and unethical activity. The letter was ignored. In 2011, federal regulators received more than 700 whistleblower complaints from Wells Fargo. Nothing changed. Because the numbers worked, Wall Street applauded, and executives collected their bonuses. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. June 2007, John Stumpf becomes CEO of Wells Fargo. His profile seemed straight out of an American rags-to-riches story. Born into a family of 11 children in rural Minnesota, father was a farmer. He shared a bedroom with his brothers until he got married. Graduated in the bottom half of his class in high school. He joined the bank in 1982 as an analyst, climbed the ladder step by step, never left, never questioned, absorbed Kovacevic's culture like a devoted disciple. And when he reached the top, he intensified it. The timing was extraordinary. In 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed. The worst financial crisis since the Great Depression swept through Wall Street. Banks fell, giants disappeared, but Wells Fargo emerged untouched. While other banks had bet on toxic derivatives, Wells Fargo had kept its simple model, retail banking and cross-selling. It didn't need a bailout, and when the dust settled, it bought the wreckage. In October 2008, it acquired Wachovia, the fourth largest bank in America, for $15 billion. The press applauded. John Stumpf became a star. Warren Buffett publicly praised him. Credibility was total. And it was precisely this credibility that allowed the fraud to continue. With the acquisition, Wells Fargo grew dramatically. More branches, more employees, more targets. And commanding the sales machine was Carrie Tolstedt, head of the Community Banking Division, more than 100,000 employees under her direct supervision. She set the targets, she decided who rose and who fell. In 2014, American Banker named her the most powerful woman in banking. But internally, she was known for her intolerance of bad news. Managers who raised concerns were silenced. Inconvenient reports were buried. The mantra was clear: results, not excuses. And the results appeared. Quarter after quarter, Stumpf presented brilliant numbers to investors. In at least 12 conference calls, he boasted about cross-selling as proof of Wells Fargo's strength. Our customers have an average of 6.3 products with us. Our goal is 8. We're getting there. Wall Street responded by buying more shares. And here's the perverse mechanism. Every time the numbers went up, the stock price rose. Every time the stock price rose, executive bonuses increased. Every time bonuses increased, pressure on employees intensified. Money flowed up, pressure flowed down. Corporate greed in its purest form. Warning signs multiplied. In 2013, the Los Angeles Times revealed that employees were forging signatures to open accounts. Wells Fargo's response? Bad apples, isolated cases. But the numbers told a different story. More than 5,000 employees fired over the years for sales integrity violations. 5,000. If 5,000 people commit the same violation, it's not an individual problem, it's a system problem. But admitting that would mean acknowledging that Wall Street's numbers were inflated, that the stock was overvalued, and no one wanted that. In 2015, Wells Fargo reached its peak. It surpassed the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, became the largest bank in the world by market capitalization, stock at all-time highs. John Stumpf was a legend. Carrie Tolstedt, the most powerful woman in banking. The cross-selling model was studied in business schools. No one questioned how they managed to sell so many products. The answer, that they couldn't, at least not legitimately, would only come to light the following year. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same. September 8, 2016. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau announces a historic fine, $185 million against Wells Fargo. The charge? Opening approximately 2 million accounts without customer authorization. 2 million. Suddenly, what had been bad apples was revealed to be a systematic operation that had been running for over a decade. The news spread like wildfire. Newspapers, television, social media. America woke up to a disturbing reality. The country's most admired bank had been robbing its own customers. But the worst was yet to come. 12 days later, John Stumpf was summoned to the United States Senate, Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. What happened in that room became one of the most viral moments in American political history. Elizabeth Warren, senator from Massachusetts, had the floor, and she didn't waste time. Since this scandal became public, you have repeatedly said you take responsibility, but what have you actually done to hold yourself accountable? Stumpf tried to respond. Warren cut him off. Have you resigned? No. Have you returned 1 nickel of the millions you earned while this fraud was going on? The board will handle that. Have you returned 1 single nickel? Silence. I'll take that as a no. Warren continued, relentless. She exposed that Stumpf had made 12 conference calls to investors, boasting about cross-selling numbers, numbers he knew, or should have known, were inflated by fraud. She exposed that the shares Stumpf held had increased in value by $200 million during the fraud period. And then, the phrase that echoed across the country. If a bank teller took a handful of $20 bills out of the drawer, they'd go to prison. But you squeezed your employees to the breaking point so they would cheat customers. And when it all blew up, you kept your job, you kept your millions, and you went on television to blame thousands of workers making $12 an hour. Pause. This is about accountability. You should resign. You should give back the money you made while this fraud was going on, and you should be criminally investigated. The video went viral within hours. Millions of views, massive shares. The confrontation between the senator and the CEO became a symbol of everything wrong with Wall Street. And Stumpf? He appeared at the hearing with his right hand bandaged, said he'd hurt himself playing with his grandchildren, but no one was interested in excuses. In the following weeks, the pressure became unbearable. Republicans and Democrats, rarely in agreement on anything, united in condemnation. They called Wells Fargo a criminal enterprise and a school of scoundrels. The Federal Reserve demanded explanations. Regulators intensified investigations. Customers began closing accounts en masse. And on October 12, 2016, 34 days after the hearing, John Stumpf resigned. But he didn't leave empty-handed. Carrie Tolstedt, the architect of the impossible target system, had already retired in July, 2 months before the scandal broke publicly. Coincidence? Hardly, because if she had been fired, she would have lost $45 million in compensation. By retiring, she kept $125 million. The Wells Fargo banking scandal was finally exposed, but the question everyone wanted answered was simple. Who would pay? And the answer, or lack thereof, would shock even more than the fraud itself. In the following months, the scandal spread like an oil slick. Internal investigations revealed that the number of fake accounts wasn't 2 million, it was 3.5 million. But it didn't stop there. It was discovered that Wells Fargo had charged car insurance to 570,000 customers without their consent. 20,000 of those customers had their cars illegally repossessed. Some lost their jobs because they had no transportation. It was discovered that the bank had altered mortgages without authorization, that it had enrolled customers in life insurance policies they never requested, that it had charged illegal fees to small businesses. Every week brought a new revelation, a new layer of bank fraud exposed. The fines piled up. In 2018, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau imposed another $1 billion in penalties. The Federal Reserve took an unprecedented measure. It imposed a growth limit on the bank, the so-called asset cap. Wells Fargo was prohibited from growing beyond its $2 trillion in assets. It was a corporate prison sentence, and it would last 7 years. In 2020, the Department of Justice announced a $3 billion agreement to close criminal and civil investigations. Wells Fargo admitted that the fraud had begun in 2002, 14 years before it was publicly exposed. And those responsible? John Stumpf was banned from the banking industry for life in 2020. He paid a personal fine of $17.5 million. Sounds like a lot, but Stumpf left Wells Fargo with more than $130 million in compensation. Carrie Tolstead lost $19 million in clawbacks. She kept the remaining $106 million. In January 2025, 3 former executives were fined another $18.5 million. Claudia Russ Anderson, former head of risk, was banned from banking forever. But here's the fact that outrages the most. No one went to prison. 0 days in jail for anyone involved. 14 years of fraud, 3.5 million fake accounts, millions of customers harmed, thousands of employees with careers destroyed, whistleblowers retaliated against and silenced, and not a single executive saw the inside of a cell. Critics called it the perfect case of too big to jail. When a bank is powerful enough, justice becomes fines, and fines for institutions of this size are just the cost of doing business. As for the whistleblowers, some were eventually compensated. The Department of Labor ordered reinstatements and back pay. In 2022, a single case resulted in a $22 million award, the largest ever granted by OSHA to an individual whistleblower. But for many, it came too late. Years of legal battles, lost careers, lives changed forever. The system that was supposed to protect them had betrayed them. In June 2025, the Federal Reserve finally lifted the asset cap. Wells Fargo was free to grow again. The question left hanging was simple. Did they learn their lesson? The Wells Fargo case isn't just history. It's a mirror. In October 2024, TD Bank was fined $3 billion, the largest money laundering penalty in American banking history. It became the first bank to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit money laundering. The pattern repeats: aggressive targets, toxic culture, ignored warnings, profits above all else. And Wells Fargo? Despite announced reforms, 2024 reports indicate that pressure on employees has returned. Workers describe renewed sales quotas, reduced staff, and fear of retaliation. On social media, customers continue to discover accounts opened without consent 15 years ago. They receive compensation letters. Some accept $500 for fraud that destroyed their credit. The financial scandal officially ended, but its waves still ripple. The larger question remains: if a bank can defraud millions of customers for 14 years, pay fines, and continue operating, What's stopping it from happening again? If executives can pocket hundreds of millions and never see a prison cell, where's the deterrent? Wells Fargo revealed something many preferred not to know. When a company is big enough, the law becomes negotiable, ethics optional, and justice a luxury that the powerful can buy. 8 is great was just a slogan, but it exposed an uncomfortable truth about how the system really works. 3 words. 8 is great. And millions of lives changed forever. The question remains, if you were a Wells Fargo employee back then, trapped between ethics and survival, between speaking up and losing everything, what would you have done?